Alright, so what's up, boys and girls? Valmir here with a new video for you guys today, and today we are going to be reviewing Remnant from the Ashes. Now, Remnant from the Ashes is a Souls-like shooter which was released on PC, Xbox, and PS4 on August 20, 2019. The game was developed by Gunfire Games, the same developers of Darksiders 3 and Chronos, both games of which I have not yet played, and was published by Perfect World Entertainment. Now you may be asking why I'm reviewing this so late. Well, as a SoulsBorne fan, I was actually interested in playing a shooter like Dark Souls game. But at the time, I had no money and I was hearing negative things about the game, like bosses not being meant for solo play and ammo being an issue compared to the number of mobs being thrown at you. Now the game actually went free on the Epic Game Store a few weeks ago, and that was my chance to try it and find out if the said problems were actually true. In this video, we're going to go through the pros and cons of the game in terms of story, gameplay, and playtime / fun / replayability. Okay, right off the bat, not gonna lie, the story is ass. Or at least the way it was executed was ass. Now let me tell you why. At first, since it was a Souls-like, I imagined that the story would play out with cutscenes and item description reading and mysterious dialogue, and while the game does have that, the addition of scenes where the character is involved with dialogue options kills the experience, the momentum, and the vibe. You sit there for what seems to be hours long worth of dialogue from characters barely introduced that haven't made a connection to the player enough for you to even care. Now, having dialogue options was unique, but it never seemed like the choosing ever mattered to the story, or that it would impact future events, and was dumbed down to just more lore introduction. Now, this was supposed to be actually okay with me if they didn't add these things during the main cutscenes of the game. If they just added this for the side characters, for the NPCs, where you could just talk to them optionally and then choose these dialogue options to get a little bit of more lore out of them, that would have been fine. But the game, with its main cutscenes, includes the player and usually gives you a choice between two dialogue options, but it never really felt like during those main quest storyline cutscenes that whatever choice I'd pick would even change the outcome of the game. It never felt that. But now I do want to point out that there are some dialogue options that do change depending on what choice that you choose. Spoiler alert, there is this boss in the game. His name is the Undying King. He gives you the objective of retrieving the Guardian's Heart, which is from another boss in the game. After retrieving the Guardian's Heart, you can choose through dialogue options whether to give it to him or not. If you do not give it to him, he will become hostile and he will become a boss battle. And of course, the vice versa if you do give it to him. So those are one of the things where dialogue options actually really matter. But the thing is, aside from that, everything else that has a dialogue option in the main quest storyline, it didn't really matter which one you chose, or at least that's how it felt like. Now, I'm pretty sure the story actually has substance, but again, the execution didn't hook me enough to actually really care about it. Alright, so moving on to gameplay. Now, the gameplay is what you'd expect from a Souls-like. Keep your distance while you shoot, and when they get near, dodge roll. And this dodge roll has iframes on it. Now, it takes stamina to roll and sprint, but not to shoot or use your melee weapon, surprisingly. And your character can also vault over low obstacles, giving that added mechanic of advanced movement during combat with multiple opponents. Now, sliding is also in the game, but I found that I barely use this in combat or in general movement. Your guns and melee weapons have stats and are upgradable, but the only stat that increases is damage, and there is no other way to increase the other stats. The build diversity occurs under the trait mechanic. Traits are kind of like stats that you can increase while you level up through experience that you gain through killing mobs. Only a few traits are unlocked at the beginning, while others are unlocked after completing certain things in the game. The sheer amount of traits allows for a variety of builds, but some are greatly more important than others. In connection to this, the maps and bosses that you face per playthrough are random, so you may or may not be able to unlock a certain trait in a playthrough because you never encountered a certain boss. Same thing with the weapons. Each upgrade of the armor only increases the armor rating. There is no way that you can modify parts of the armor or the weapon so that you can upgrade other stats. But what's interesting with these armor pieces and what adds to the build diversity in the game is that each armor piece has its own effect that increases per number of the armor piece that you wear. Now this actually adds to the build diversity because you can center your armor set towards the traits that you are trying to build or the weapon that you're using. The armor, the weapon, and the traits all combine and jive together to make your optimal build. Now, another thing are the mods. Now these also add to build diversity. Mods are kind of like skills that you add to your weapons, and these mods either give you a support skill while you are using the weapon or gives that weapon an alternate mode of fire. And while the mod themselves, in my opinion, do not contribute that much to build diversity, they're certainly useful as support tools for the player to make the game a lot easier. But how exactly do you upgrade these weapons and armor? As you explore, you will find the materials that you need to upgrade your weapons and armor throughout the map. Not only this, but after killing enemies, they will drop materials periodically that you use to upgrade your weapons and armor. Now there are 4 worlds in the base game, with each world having 4 dungeons, and dungeons contain bosses or pathways which unlock the path to another area of the map. Now I say 4 worlds, but here on the screen right now there's only 3 worlds right now. The 4th and last world isn't showing up here because I think it's only accessible by replaying the game over and over again. You can't really farm per se this area. How this all works, each map is one big area, but some parts are closed off by gates that can only be opened through the other side. Now entering a dungeon and completing said dungeon could possibly give you an exit towards the other side, where you can open the gate that previously blocked off an area and connect the whole map and make it into one big giant area, just like you would see in Dark Souls. The gameplay of this game is definitely the bread and butter, but enemy types tend to become stale with just a few added features per map to the enemies. Now when you fight these said enemies, you're going to be fighting against maybe melee archetypes and ranged archetypes, with the melee archetypes running towards you, trying to get near you, having maybe 1 or 2 ranged attacks, and then you have your ranged archetypes that shoot you from afar. Now in every map there's going to be these kinds of foes, and they all work similarly. They all try and run in a straight line, they all will try and dodge periodically, and they will all try to throw their weapons at you at some point. What only changes is the amount of health that they have. Sometimes they dodge a little bit more. Sometimes when they die, they become another mob and start running at you afterwards. But essentially, it's the same melee and ranged archetype and a few more stronger opponents here and there. Now, some bosses are pretty unique, while others are just beefed up versions of normal enemies. Now, what bothers me is that the boss fights seldom consist of just the boss, and there are way too many mobs spawning with them. Now, honestly, the bosses themselves aren't hard. They only have a few mechanics that you easily catch onto, and what makes the encounter hard is the amount of mobs that are running at you. Now this is a severe downside for the game, seeing that it is a Souls-like. Now if you've played Dark Souls before, one of the just bread and butter of those kinds of games are the bosses, the boss fights. Why do you think so? Because the boss fights are heckin' unique. You've been trying to grind and get from point A to the boss fight, and when you get to the boss fight is just completely different mob. So much bigger, has so many attacks, so different mechanics than the normal mobs that you've been facing up to this point. So you have to learn everything starting from scratch and in the heat of battle. And that's exactly what gives the players that sense of accomplishment after they beat a boss. Now the bosses here in Remnant from the Ashes, while some of them are pretty unique, trust me when I say that the hard part of the boss fights is mob management. It's not that the bosses are hard, it's that there's so many things running at you at the same time, and it's so hard to kill them all because of the lack of area of effect damage in the game, that It just becomes how well can you manage the number of enemies running at you during the boss fight. Now there are some bosses in the game that I would allow for it to have mobs in the boss fight, and I'm actually not really opposed to that. But the thing is, it's freaking unlimited. They do not stop. They keep on running at you for no reason. They just spawn and spawn and spawn, and it just becomes extremely repetitive and extremely tedious, because when you expect a boss fight, you expect it to be fresh. You expect it to be something new, a cut above the rest. I'm not saying all the boss fights are bad. There are a few boss fights that are really good. But again, I don't think this game captured the essence of a good boss fight with how they executed it here. Now moving on to playtime, fun, and replayability. Now by the time I finished the campaign on normal, I was around 10 hours into the game. The game is incredibly short, but you can repeat the campaign on the same or different difficulties to possibly encounter different bosses and NPCs while leveling your character. So you can actually bring over your character from your previous playthrough into another playthrough and gather more traits, gather more experiences, level up your armor and weapons and such. And there is a game mode called Adventure, which throws you into one map to clear and gives you the opportunity to just farm levels, materials, and bosses. This is kind of like an arcade version of the game, where if you are farming a certain boss or farming certain materials and such like that, you can actually create a single map from the maps available in the campaign, and you can just farm there for as long as you like. With the procedurally generated levels and build diversity, the replayability of this game is quite high. The opportunity to create crazy builds and the what seems to be infinite leveling of traits always gives you the feeling that you're getting stronger and that your grinding is actually worth it. So with all that being said, the final verdict as to whether the game is worth to get in 2020 is a big yes. And if I were to give a numerical rating to it from 1 to 10, 1 being the lowest, I'd give it a solid 7 out of 10. Well, the gameplay really is good. It's what you'd expect from a Souls-like game. Actually, when you play a Souls-like game, you expect its combat to actually be a little bit wonky. Here with Remnants from the Ashes, no, it's actually pretty smooth. It's just that the execution of the story really kind of sucked for me, and the bosses, which are supposed to be the highlight of the game, never really stood out to me that much. Only a few pop up into my head when I think about the boss fights in the game. But yeah, I hope you guys like this video. If you guys like this video, give the video a like and consider subscribing. If you guys like these kinds of videos, please tell me in the comment sections below. Now, if there is a game that you guys want me to review, put it down also in the comment sections below. I'll check it out and we'll see if we can do one. I also stream on Twitch every Tuesdays, Thursdays, Saturdays around 1 p.m. Philippines time. I do play these games on Twitch live before I review them. So if you want to see like a pre-review of the game, you guys could check me live there. If you guys have any questions, you could also check me out there, give me a follow, and maybe we could chat it out while we're live. So I hope you guys enjoyed the video, and I'll see you guys in the next one.